There we go.
This meeting is being recorded.
I'll mute HKE. There we go. Good to see everyone. Hi, Tanya. Hi, Leighton. Let's rock and roll. I'm just muting the phone as well. Erica, you want to get us going on your side? Shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, as we mentioned yesterday, we're joining and hosting this network and celebration of learning from the traditional territory of the Gwich'in and Inuvialuit peoples who've occupied this land since time immemorial, and who were stewards and took care of this land so that we could be guests and settlers on it. I recognize that this land was not given, that it's a shared responsibility, and really carry that into my work as much as is humanly possible each day through my relationships, through the way in which I attend and attune to my own learning and unlearning cycles, and to the capacity that I'm trying to build to work in reconciliation with my partnerships, with my communities that I'm a part of, and I'm eternally grateful for that opportunity every single day. Masicho, Koyanaini, Haicho, Kawana.
Beautiful, Erica. Welcome, friends. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional lands of the Lekwungen people, the Esquimalt and Songhees, and I do this because I'm looking out at this beautiful landscape outside my office, of which I'm so grateful to be here as a learner on these lands, on my journey of reconciliation. And as you said, Erica, unlearning and relearning and new learning and listening. And gosh, yesterday was a full, beautiful morning of listening, full, beautiful day of listening. And I was saying, friends, as our guests, Leighton and Tanya, came in, it was a day of laughter, of tears, of celebration, of learning, and a lot of sharing afterwards. I went home and I shared a lot of work with my family. Like, today was so amazing. So no pressure for today. But guest Tanya and guest Leighton. Leighton, you're from afar. Where are you joining us from, my friend?
Hi, everyone. So great to be here. I'm in Toronto, which has been taken care of by the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee and the Huron-Wendat. That's now the home to many First Nations and Inuit and Métis communities. And probably the most central thing for me is that I just recognize that Indigenous peoples are the traditional stewards of the lands wherever we are that we now occupy, and have been living here long before settlers came. So I'm working overtime as best as I can to right the historic and contemporary wrongs of colonization, and I really support Indigenous communities as best as I can in terms of their struggles for self-determination and sovereignty. And I understand that land back movement is not a trend, it's at the heart of reconciliation.
Thank you, Leighton. Hi, Tanya. Welcome back.
Good morning. How's everybody doing?
Great. I'm so grateful you're back. How's the weather there today?
Yeah, me too. Beautiful West Coast, Sunshine Coast day, and yeah, super grateful to be here and enjoying the standing ones. The old growth is it's incredible. So just excited to be here and do a lot more learning and a lot more listening today.
Yay. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Heichka.
Yeah.
Friends, some process pieces here. Remember our note catcher, our thought catcher yesterday? We had all those beautiful cells on our 11 by 17 templates. We encourage you to document and gather evidence towards what resonates with you. And, with every share out, we encourage you to jump in the chat and share what's really resonating with you and ask questions, make connections, definitely plant seeds for follow-up learning with our colleagues here. Time is a factor, as we saw yesterday. Erica doing your very best softly to nudge us along through the powerful sharing. And we certainly don't want to cut anyone short, but if we could be mindful of your time slot, that would be greatly appreciated, just to honor everyone's sharing today. This is being recorded. Erica, anything else on your mind with regards to process today? I think I covered everything.
No, I think that's pretty much good to go. Let's roll here. So we'll start with Brian.
Right? Brian, and I hope everyone did their homework. Everyone did their homework, right? Watching the video, the epic video.
So I think we'll just give Brian a few minutes just to, so most everybody's watched it, just to sort of talk the process of that, and then if anybody has any questions or comments.
Hello, Brian here. Can everybody hear me?
Absolutely, Brian. Thank you.
Awesome. So yeah, I hope everybody watched the video. Yeah, I originally was just kind of making a slideshow, and then just kind of felt like doing the video. So I went for a walk with my pup and took some video, and then came back into the classroom to kind of explain a very general formula for how lessons go. Obviously, not all lessons go that way. Like I know that in the video it kind of seems pretty formulaic, but in reality, like that's kind of what I shoot for. But you know, everything changes constantly, and so you constantly work with it. And yeah, so that's just kind of like the general way that I think inquiry has really helped me address attendance and make sure that I'm giving something valuable to all my learners. So, yeah, do people have any questions about the video?
I would love for you to talk about the metaphor of your hike. You know, clearly there is a metaphor there. Could you speak to the symbolism of you taking us on a little bit of a hike with you?
Well, I wanted to talk about the challenges in the classroom, and so I didn't want it to just kind of feel like a whole downer. Like we address the challenges and talk about the challenges for a reason, right? So the idea being that by actually addressing a challenge, kind of like walking up a hill, you get a better view of what's in front of you and how to tackle it.
Beautiful. Grateful for you, Brian. Grateful for you. What a great way to start our day, doing a little bit of homework, and for you to spend so much time and thoughtful preparation and taking us on the hike, but also into your classroom and walking us through some planning. And I think that was a through line yesterday, Erica, wasn't it? The intentional planning, the strength-based planning, the planning for skill development, and planning with the people in place in mind.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Brian, like when you were walking your way through kind of the rules about, you know, not changing for the community, not changing the community, but changing practice, and then just that data project that you collected, did those conversations come up with students in terms of kind of that work you're doing in the background to sort of observe what's happening?
Yeah, like we do a bunch of goal setting and stuff, and the students talk about like showing up every day and constantly like kind of apologize and feel bad for not showing up every day. And like, yeah, if you want like the best education possible, like, yeah, you absolutely should show up every single day. But a lot of students are missing time because they're out with family or participating in their culture. So there is kind of like an air of people almost like apologizing and feeling bad. And so I kind of wanted to present an alternative to kind of be like, no, like it's not the best possible, but it's still a valuable education if all you can give me is 50 hours a week. And that was kind of the idea of behind the community doesn't change. Like I wanted to reflect what the community was offering and giving me, like giving me their time, right? So I wanted to appreciate that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really sort of resonated with me was the idea of honing in on the time that you do have, right? And making that meaningful. Like, so that was a big takeaway for me. That idea of like, this is what I'm dealing with, and knowing what I'm dealing with is really important so that I can make sure that those moments of the days are useful and relevant and authentic for learners, right?
Yeah. And like, sure, I like, it's not the goal to like increase attendance, but I feel like it will be a result of people receiving something valuable for their time, right? If you come to school and it's a place where you constantly feel behind and you're like, oh man, like I missed the last week, like what's the point in showing up for even a day? Then it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you make the time valuable, then people will give you more time if they want to. Yeah.
I see some hashtags in the chat there from you, Leighton. I appreciate that feedback. I'm sure, I don't know if Brian, you can see his chat too. It just basically hashtags the inclusion of inquiries related to no doubt what you're talking about.
I just jump in a question for you, Brian. Wondering if you've had a chance to track attendance when you're doing cultural events, when you're doing land relational learning, and I'm wondering if there is a difference in terms of the number of students attending on those days for those experiences.
I haven't looked at that specifically. I do keep track of like when we're doing cultural events, and I could pretty easily look up the attendance on those days. Yeah, I feel like there might be a slight uptick, but I don't think it would be significant. Just because like a lot of students are. Yeah, I feel like they're gonna miss time no matter what, because they're already like going out on the land. So yeah, I feel like there might be a slight uptick, but I don't know. I haven't actually looked into that.
Okay, no worries. Thanks. I was just curious.
Yeah, I absolutely could. Like,
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I totally could. I feel like that would be interesting to kind of see it. I know like there's a very sharp downturn right now because the geese are here. The geese and ducks have arrived, and so everybody's running out onto the land. Yeah, I haven't. I've been trying to find some sort of like pattern, but I don't know. I haven't found anything.
And Brian, that marker, that outcome of increased attendance, that's a nice benefit, but that's not the sole objective, is it? It's embracing the time that you have, as you articulated throughout the video, and helping it be meaningful, helping students have a strong sense of belonging. And I'm curious if the return on investment over many months of a different schooling experience will yield perhaps the outcome that we're talking about right now, greater attendance or improved attendance. But goodness, that's certainly not the main objective right now for you at all, is it?
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to, I didn't want to make my goal that I want to see a change in the community. If it happens, that's fantastic. Like, I don't know, I find school super, super rewarding. So I would love to see other people find that as well. And if people start showing up more often, that's fantastic. With that said, I don't want to make it the focus or the goal. Because then that's kind of me, somebody who's been here for 5 minutes, saying how the community ought to change.
Absolutely right. Beautiful comments in the chat, Brian. I hope you can see them, and I hope you can revisit them. Yeah, from Daniel's group, Paige's group. Thank you, Erica, and thank you, Brian.
Thanks,
a lot of time spent
Brian.
on the video. It was a fantastic artifact. Fantastic artifact.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right, look at us just cruising. So that being said, let's rejoin our schedule and invite East 3 Elementary to the table. East 3 Elementary, do you want me to share? Do you want to share your own? How do you want to?
I'll try sharing the screen right now and see if I can get it to work. Let's try.
And thanks everybody for jumping into the chat. I think that really helps the contributors, get some collaborative feedback for their work as well. So as we go, if you want to add your thoughts, and definitely let's make some couple minutes at the end to really access and use the chat today. So thanks to those who have already jumped in there.
So Erica, are you seeing the orange slide that says Caribou Inquiry?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, we are here. So let's turn it over to Jesse. Oops, one sec.
Jesse.
Okay,
We've got our daily bread.
Mark made us bread.
Okay.
Nice.
Am I able to move through these? slides?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I'm gonna have your bread, Mark. Or Amy. Okay, so this is a project that I did with my grade 6 students. It started with a provocation. I'll give you a picture quickly before I go back. So my partner harvested some meat from the Aklavik Mountains, and I brought it in to have my students go through the process of deboning, cutting up meat, grinding it, and then we actually cooked it for one of our Book and Bannock monthly community events. So that got students thinking and wondering and, you know, engaging in the process of a shared experience. And then this all kind of happened organically, and it was actually a student who inspired this inquiry. Through our biodiversity unit, we were talking about animal adaptations and things that endanger animals, and a student asked, like a student who doesn't typically engage with my class very much, was sitting on the floor, and out of the corner I just hear the kid say, what would happen if the caribou went extinct? Well, that's a really great question. Why don't we explore that? So that's how this whole thing came about. So we started with a KWL framework, and we started with, what do we already know about caribou? So if you look in the top left corner there, you'll see we started there. And then here's some examples of the things they already knew. And I used the Live It Earth template for kind of the exemplars or the framework for the KWL. And we had like a lot of, you know, we had scientific knowledge come out of it, but then we also had traditional knowledge. So the boys said the best gun to shoot a caribou with is a 270. And then tying back to our science unit, they were able to differentiate that it's a vertebrae. And then we did things like caribou anatomy. So once we did this caribou anatomy, I used another resource from the Porcupine Caribou Management Board. Students made their own caribous in our classroom. So we had some interesting looking caribous come out of there. But that was a good way to use up, use a different sort of style of learning. So it had an art element to it. It basically gave, you know, kind of free rein to use whatever material tools they needed to be able to create this. So you see on one of those caribou, there's googly eyes. Their antlers are toothpicks. There's some other things happening there, but they really enjoyed that. I'm not sure why this isn't showing up. This is important.
Oh. Is that not showing?
No. So if you were able to see this, it would show that we used a question matrix.
Do you want to stop sharing your screen and I can try? And that way maybe it will show. Okay, let me just try. Keep talking.
Okay. So we did the question matrix, and Mark actually introduced me to this one, where it's got a, it would be easier to explain if you could see it.
You can see it right now.
Okay. So yeah, you start with, and they're actually shaded by complexity. So the easiest questions to come up with an answer are the ones in light white, I guess in white. And then the gray ones are a little harder, more complex questions. And then the gray ones are like really deep thinking questions. So in there, they came up with 3 caribou related questions, because the goal of this question matrix was to develop a set of interview questions that they are going to take to people in the community to ask them. So we have, how did you learn about the land? How can we protect caribou? And what will happen if caribou go extinct?
So very open-ended questions for those students. And that is a thinking strategy to help them develop those cognitive questioning skills. And here's an example. The next slide is an example of what one of my students' interview questions look like. So you have typical sixth grader questions. What would you do if you had $1 million? What can you do instead of being on your phone? And then what will happen if the caribou go extinct? I've also connected this inquiry back to note-taking developing skills. So these reading passages for students are all relate back to caribou. So these particular passages are talking about predators to caribou and their food sources. So students learned how to highlight important information, pick out key notes, key ideas, and then they take those and turn them back into their own summaries. So all part of the grade 6 literacy curriculum. The next slide is just an example of you being able to use a read aloud or independent reading, and students tie that back to more literacy connections or book reviews. The next slide, thank you. Again, it's Live at Earth. They have some really great resources in there. So they've got the caribou slides. And this one, for this particular slide deck, they have Yellowknife Chief, I think it's Eddie Sangres. So he's quite knowledgeable from the Yellowknife area about the caribou populations. And I think he took part in developing this slide deck. But a lot of relevant and interesting information to my students. So Indigenous perspectives, you can see the map there shows the traditional language areas in the NWT. They specifically point out caribou's adaptations, threats facing caribou. So it relates back to those notes, the notes exercise that we did. And I think, what is my last slide? Do I have a last slide?
Be the last slide.
Sorry. Okay, you want to go back to slide 3, Eric? That's kind of where I tie it in.
Erica has the old version of the slides.
Oh, okay. Actually, I think if you want, you can do it again. I think the reason why it didn't show up is something to do with the slideshow feature of that one slide. So if you go back to yours, it will work. Because when I slideshow show it, it was the same. So it's probably just about a layering of that slide.
Are you frozen?
No, I just had to find us again. No worries, we're just trying Zoom now. Where did I?
While that's happening, Jesse.
Yep.
I always yesterday I was also really every time just thinking about like what impact on students, like how did you find the impact on students throughout the process?
I found that like students, especially my students that are hunters and who spend a lot of time on land, it seemed like they were confident during these exercises and almost, it impacts their knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
The kids who don't,
They could be the experts, right?
yeah. The kids who don't thrive academically are typically the ones that thrive when you ask them and you give value to their traditional knowledge and their knowledge of the land, cultural practices.
Should work now.
Okay.
So it's just not full screen, but you can click on the slide.
All right. And the next steps, I think, to wrap this unit, I thought about integrating more math and art. So my students have already done graphing and data management, so we can connect some information, caribou populations over time with that. And I wanted to do something fun, like creating caribou migration patterns with Ozobots.
Cool. I feel like a collaborative with Paige would be amazing, who is also a very big Cody lover. Paige, if you're in the space, think about it.
Seed planted officially.
Yes, really cool.
Yeah, say I love your question matrix and how you use the question matrix to sort questions, but also have student interest and relevance and prior knowledge guide some next steps. I'm curious,
Yeah.
how did that feel for you sharing the learning like that? Did you feel kind of uncertain? Did you just have to put faith and trust in the scholar, hoping that they would take you there? Like, did the matrix help you have more faith and trust? I'm just curious if you could speak to the matrix a bit.
I think the matrix was helpful because it gave students their own voice in, formulating questions, but I was able to guide them, like suggest questions like, okay, let's think about something that ties us back to caribou questions, because we're going to be asking our elders and community experts and people outside of the school these interview questions, and we keep wondering what will happen if the caribou disappear. So let's ask people in our community what they think too.
Love it. Love it. And so visible and transparent and collaborative, right? Like what a great way for you to actually co-design the learning with your scholars. Love.
Yeah. And then you have really crazy questions like what would happen if there was a zombie apocalypse?
Hey, high interest, high relevance, right?
They had fun with it.
Totally they did. Friends, thanks for throwing ideas in the chat. Leighton, the king of hashtags, my goodness. And now emojis. We got some fire. We got some fire.
You can have that back.
So great.
So should we? Okay, we're going to, speaking of planting a seed, we're going to move to Amy now.
That was
Hi, good morning.
good sticker.
Fun. We got here. So my name is Amy. I teach grade 5 here at East 3, and I'm really excited to share a comprehensive food and nutrition unit. And it's all about growing food and plants. And I have to preface the fact that parts of this unit is still ongoing, and I'll discuss more about it in the later slides. So in the second slide here, can everyone see the slides? Yeah. We have two aspects of our learning wall. One of them is our inquiry learning journey, and it's based off of Kate Murdoch's 6 stages of the inquiry cycle. And so each portion of the bulletin board represents a specific stage. And what I learned really quickly is that the journey is not a linear process, it's cyclical. And as you investigate more questions that arise, I do have to apologize that I don't have the final photo of the learning wall there, but it was covered, and we kept going back to investigate more and to find out more questions and to make more connections to what we were learning, and also taking more community action. Then another aspect of our learning, all of it was based off of provocation of our gardening tower. It's a hydroponics gardening tower that allows you to grow herbs, plants, and vegetables all year round. And it's automated, so there's a system for the water and for the lights, and it allows anyone to not have a green thumb to be able to grow food in an indoor setting. So that was part of our learning piece. And then in terms of our subject focus, it integrated this unit, a lot of the Dene Kade and Innu Kadagit curriculum, with looking at how plants are part of traditional and medicinal uses. And we have our health unit where we're looking at the nutritional values of plants, as well as we had a language arts piece where part of summative assessment was creating an ethnobotany research poster. And then science within the human body, and then social studies where we're looking at the physical regions and the vegetation that was growing in the Beaufort region. So our inquiry unit was guided by 3 essential big questions. Where does food come from? What is food security? And how are indigenous plants good for our physical health? In terms of strategies and approaches that we use, I'll describe the photos here. So the photo on the top right, we have a bunch of students that are doing question sorting. For doing the question sorting, what I really loved about Trevor's technique with using the word bank, it really helped the students formulate questions, because in the beginning of the school year, when I asked the students, what questions do you have? They always drop a blank and they don't really know where to go from there. So the word bank, with all the vocabulary that we were learning, whether it was associated with hydroponics, food security, the parts of the plant tower, it was all labeled on there. And then because of the various reading levels in my class, I also included a picture right beside the words, and that helped to formulate their questions. And then I know the picture is cut off there, but we also had like a question prompt. So questions start with a who, what, when, where, why. And then the students sorted it based upon the plants that are growing in the tower, the machine itself, or the functionality of the system. And then we also did a see, think, wonder, and then I used to think and now I think. And what's really interesting is that I used to think and now I think, if you ask any of my students in class, you'll see a drastic difference in what they thought before and to at the last of June of school. And then in terms of provocation, it's also really important to build a provocation. So with the guard tower here, we're lucky enough in the school here to have two. So there's one downstairs in the school foyer, which Mark and I built. So we're able to figure out if there's any issues with it. And then the second one in the classroom, the students built from the ground up. So that's what the second picture on the left is showing, is that the students are building it, and it was a very team and collaborative effort. And they actually take a lot of pride in what is growing in the tower, and they'll always give me updates of what's growing, if there's a problem, if a plant is dying, then you'd be like the first to know. And then we've used the land as a provocation for a lot of our excursions, whether it was rabbit snare, Boot Lake, because the land itself is also a very valuable food source, and the Mackenzie River itself, and then lastly, our garden in the greenhouse. In terms of the strengths and interest among my class, food is a huge motivator. A lot of my students are very food motivated, either to task or just they're hungry often. But what I found is, like, right from the beginning of September, a lot of their diets are heavily processed foods. So they tend to have a more salty and sweet palate. But what I really brought in the picture is the fact that they can expand their palate. And what I always say to the students is give foods at least a try. And how I've done that is through our monthly community lunches. The first Wednesday of every month, we do a cooking celebration, and it's all based upon different types of cuisine. So every month there'd be a different type of cuisine based upon what the students choose. So in the pictures at the bottom left there, the students are making rice paper rolls, which was part of our Vietnamese cuisine. And the students that are chopping vegetables was part of our Italian food. So we made spaghetti together. And the lettuce in the picture there is all grown from the plant tower. The students also love any leadership or mentoring opportunities. So we've had an opportunity to work really closely with Aaron's Threes, which is a buddy class. So they've taught the students how the plant tower works, the type of energy that's being used, and they've also done a lot of volunteering at the Inuvik Food Bank. So for quarter two, we went once a month, and the students there have of stocking the freezers, and they've helped out with the hampers, which get delivered to local residents in the community. And the students love it. They always ask to go back. And I have to be quite honest, like my class, not everybody does get along, but it was the very first time where I was able to take a step back, and every single student was engaged, they were participating, they were all working together in that food bank experience. And then in terms of like evidence and doing assessment, we did a summative assessment on the right here. That's an example of a witch and ethnobotany poster. So in the fall, we did a medicine plant walk, and the students created a poster based upon a plant of their choice from the plant walk, and it connected into social studies as well as their science human body unit. So the students connected based upon what system that the plant was specifically used for. And then as a school, we did a school-wide inquiry question table based upon the plant tower here. So there's a little question box on the table there, and anyone that had any questions could write it out on a slip of paper and drop it into the box. And on the pictures on the window there's like a word bank, there's like a question prompt to help with formulating questions. And the picture in the middle there is the students creating a Jamboard of all the questions asked. So I'll pick out a funny one that was asked. So the specifics of the plant towers, it uses 2 types of growing mediums, and one of them is called hydroton, which is these clay round bubbles. And a lot of times the students think it's like rabbit poop, it's some form of poop. So the question that was commonly asked was like, is this poop? And the students here would say like, no, it's not. It's like, it's used for aerating the roots and to add more moisture into the plants. And then looking at connection to place and community, we've explored 2 places in the community here extensively. There's the Inuvik greenhouse, which currently the school has 4 plots. We planted most of the root vegetables and salad greens into the plot that's into one of the plots. And then the plot right next to my classes is another grade 5s, and it's going to be a sensory garden, which we're going to plant next week. So it's a lot of herbs and flowers intermixed. And we've been helping to peer teach a lot of other classes as well, the grade 2s, grade 3s, and the grade 1s about gardening. And then last year in the fall, I mentioned about the plant medicine walk. It was a self-guided medicine walk at the Western Arctic Research Center ethnobotany garden made by the Aurora Research Institute. So we had Annika Trimble come in as a guest, and she talked more about the Gwich'in plant kit and the herbarium that's inside, and allowed the students to see more in detail of the medicinal and the traditional uses of plants. And then lastly, I think a lot about the Northwest Territories and how to become a capable person and what that means here in the community of Inuvik. And what I really value as a teacher is being able to teach lifelong skills for my students that go beyond the grade level. And so a lot of the unit here has been teaching about proper knife skills, being able to knife properly, being able to cut properly, handling skills and the safety that's associated with it, as well as the willingness to be able to try new foods. I saw a lot of improvement in that with the students from September to now. And then being able to comfortably share their knowledge with their peers, with other classes and their family members. And then last but not least, another teacher value that I have is working towards sustainability. We've talked a lot of really large concepts about food security, farm to table, land to table, and food kilometers, and what that all is in terms of climate change and how can students enact change within the community. And that's why we've had a greenhouse plot, as well as growing food indoors at the school here, and also giving back to the community at the food bank to make that whole holistic approach. And last but not least, looking at the indigenous plants that are grown in the Beaufort Delta, and that itself is also a very valuable food source. So yeah, the kids had a lot of fun, and I'm really proud of all their hard work they put in.
Amy, oh my gosh, right? Erica, round of applause. Jesse, round of applause. Gosh, both examples, right, Erica? Just circling around relevance and place and, you know, not complacent learning. Like every photograph I think you showed us had students up, moving, doing, connecting, collaborating. And that observation really struck me, is that you saw students that typically didn't engage more engaged. And I also really appreciated your honesty in sharing some of your teacher values and how these teacher values surface in this inquiry, you know, lifelong learning skills and healthy living. And those definitely surface. I appreciate you being honest with those. So thank you.
I know Katie is also with you, right? Are you going to share as well, Katie?
I just, for my unit, I did a little bit from what I did last year. And then the main thing that we did this year, which Amy was a big supporter of, was the greenhouse. And so we went and we have a plot there, and the kids started in the classroom to watch it grow. And then we transplanted, and each week we go back and we are in there watering. And I'm going to start bringing some of our math lessons, we're doing measurement in there, and we're going to start being in that greenhouse more to, you know, use all the resources in there to do it. The kids are loving it. You know, transplanting to them is interesting because they think all their food grows at Northmart. So it's interesting to see that they're like, oh, lettuce starts from a seed and then it goes into the soil and then it grows and you can eat it. And Amy had a wonderful idea that we're going to have a little garden party. So at the end, before school ends, we're going to get together, pick the stuff out of our garden and then eat it. So, you know, it's amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate that, like, build on too, because I know those times we had the greenhouse last year, those like beginning skills of kind of developing the persona, but then being able to like be with the older mentor students who really have developed and internalized those ethics about food, which is so evident in the evolution.
And Amy's students, you know, are the experts, and so they're going to be the teachers too for stuff, and it's great.
Mhm.
They love being able to teach others. Like, you really get to see a lot of leadership that comes out, and they're going into grade 6 next year. So I think there's expectation because they're the oldest students in elementary to show a lot of leadership. So the beginning stages is already rooted in there.
Well, and I love the through line ability through the three of your inquiries, because the food sustainability piece and that idea of what would happen if the major food source of the Gwich'in people were to go extinct are so related, right? And the ethnicity pieces of what the caribou eat to the traditional medicinal plants to the way that plants nourish us, right? Like, there's such good connection and connectability between the three, which really is evident in the collaborative ethic that's built there, right? And to have Mark be that kind of through line to support that work as well is really kudos to you as your team. Kudos to using the collaborative spaces in your school to help that mentorship, that leadership, and to really lift up the students in that process. So Masi and Haicho and Koinaini for that.
I think that's been such a clear through line throughout all the sharing yesterday and today, Erica, is the collaborative structures of each team. Oh my goodness. Using the spaces, finding one another better together. That's definitely a powerful through line evidence throughout our 2 days so far.
So remember, crew, use the chat. There's lots of really beautiful things in there. And, you know, just support each other through your input. I'm sure everybody loves to hear little pieces that were your takeaways. And then we'll make real concerted space for that this afternoon as well.
Try to beat Leighton to his hashtag. Try to come up with a more apt hashtag than Leighton before he has a chance to. That could be really an engaging prompt, right? Leighton,
Right?
on fire. On fire.
Yeah.
You have a database of hashtags somewhere, Leighton. You must.
Just all up here.
All up there. Who do we have next, Erica?
Our next up are Tori and Blair, coming to us all the way from Tuck. Oh, and Jen and Wesley have joined us. So let's take a moment to welcome our member with their newest member.
Oh my goodness.
Hi.
Hi, it's very cute. I guess
Hi,
he's
Jen.
Zooms by now. That's so nice that you came in to support your colleagues.
Absolutely. We're only here for a little bit because someone needs a nap soon.
Yeah, because you have a beautiful being on your knee. Absolutely.
You want me to seize the moment to show your inquiry?
If they're okay with bumping. If
Yeah.
not, then you can do it later.
You have 5 minutes
Let's do it.
to speak through your inquiry. Okay, just give me one moment. We'll surprise visit from our network member. And let me just Google
Yes.
slides. All right, talk to us a little bit about the inquiry.
So really it's just an inquiry into raising a human. That's all it is. How do you do it? What do you do? How do I do this? How do I keep it alive?
What were
Really,
your starting
everything.
questions?
Pardon?
What were your starting questions?
How do I get it out of me? What happens next?
Okay.
How long am I in the hospital for? So we had a really tough birth, for those of you that want to know. But he's here, and that's good. He came out 56 centimeters long and 7 pounds. He was 5 days late. But that's okay. Hey, Tiny, that's okay. And then it's just kind of been, how do I keep him healthy? He's currently fighting a cold right now. Today's the first day we haven't given him Tylenol or anything like that. And then here we go. We call him Tiny Human.
Oh.
That's you.
Hold on, sorry. Okay. I don't know if I'm going to be able to share it. Okay. Oh yeah, okay.
There you go. That's what happens when you crack open a gen. My brother, this picture in the middle there, he didn't see the tiny human at first. He just thought I was really drugged out. Yeah, that's you when you were a baby. And then there's roughly a couple hours old. And then just keep scrolling. I just threw in some random photos. There he is. And I don't know, just some really cute photos. Are we like our parents? So we're asleep, like mom in the middle, and then we're watching hockey or golf or something with dad. And then we're being silly.
At first I read this slide like, are you parents like your parents? Which was an interesting question.
We kind of are. I'm definitely like my mom, and he has different parts of his mom and his dad, which is cute. And then this one says here, seriously, how do you get eyelashes like that? Because he has like the world's longest eyelashes. They're so cute. And then can you really take them anywhere?
And
yes, you can. They're very versatile, as long as you're willing to be flexible and versatile with them. So he's been to BC and Alberta, obviously. He will be going to the States this summer, and they come with a lot of stuff though, so that's the thing. That's our presentation.
I was, I really appreciated when I saw that the other day. I was like, thank you for, engaging so deeply.
I wanted to be a part of it. I was super bummed I wasn't a part of this, so I had to do one because babies make everything better.
Right. I think it's going to be a lifelong inquiry for you.
I feel like it is. Yeah, 100%. Okay, that's us.
Thanks so much for joining us, Jennifer.
Thank
My
you,
other half is
Jen.
there somewhere.
That was amazing. That was so gorgeous. Thank you for being here and sharing. That was great.
Thanks for indulging us. Okay, say bye.
So for reals in our schedule, Tori and Blair. All right.
Yeah, sorry.
And hold the phone. We also have a birthday, Blair. Happy birthday. Blair
Happy
has carrot cake in
birthday.
front of her and treats. And
Thank
so
you.
happy birthday.
Trevor, I hate to say it, but we have carrot cake.
Yeah, you don't hate to say it. You like to rub it in. That's okay. That's okay. You enjoy yourself. You're the birthday girl. You deserve it.
You.
Okay, Tuck, do you want me to share for you, or are you going to share your screen?
Could you start with mine? I can
Is that Tori?
Yeah, this is Tori.
Yeah, and then it'll be Blair.
Okay, just give me 1 sec and I will cue it up. Let's see how it does. Oh, I think it's okay.
Awesome. So I'm Tori. I'm Tori. I'm the grade 8 and 9 ELA and social studies teacher at Mangalalik School. And this is an inquiry journey that I've done with my classes. Okay, so after I finished my first 2 inquiry units with my grade 8 and 9 classes, Paige and Erica came out with an igloo theme. And so I kind of wanted to create my own definition of what inquiry means to me after having gone through it with my students. And I use that thinking routine to come up with inquiry as a dynamic and student-driven process of exploration and investigation characterized by collaboration, co-creation, accessibility, and fueled by curiosity. And I hope that you're able to see some of that within the work that I'm sharing with you today. Next slide. Thank you. So I thought that I'd start off with introducing you to the inquirers, because they're really the ones that put in a lot of hard work. So I teach both grade 8 and 9. I have the class size for the grade 8s supposed to have around 19 students, but roughly 10 show up regularly. They are very strong with creative assignments. They have strong oral skills, and they're super, super curious about everything and anything. They have challenges with writing assignments and their attendance and with keeping focus. So those were some things that I really wanted to shift as we went through the unit. And then my grade 9s, I'm supposed to have 16, but roughly 5 to 7 show up on a regular basis. And they are also creative. They're really great participators, and they are always engaged. But they do struggle with their attendance and with writing assignments as well. And at the beginning of the unit, they were hesitant to collaborate with each other. They like to be very independent. So I wanted to change that as well. Next slide. So we'll start with grade 8s. And we did an inquiry unit on the novel Touching Spirit Bear, and their inquiry question was, what is the relationship between revenge and reconciliation? Revenge and reconciliation were both kind of new words to them. So I thought that I'd break up and see what they thought those meant. So I did an activity where board and gave them a post-it note, and they anonymously responded to what they thought revenge was. And I like how all of them talked about how a kid is a bully to you and hits you, and you have to give them payback. So that was funny. We kind of chatted about why are we thinking revenge equals violence. And then we moved on to reconciliation. And I was really surprised by their responses to this. And I think that they really hit what reconciliation was on the head, like to forgive someone or something that it's like when you're in a fight or disagreement with someone, so you try to make amends and to look at their point of view. And this was before we had even started reading the novel. So it was kind of cool to see that they were sort of foreshadowing what they were about to read. And then, so one component of the inquiry unit that I did weekly was a sharing circle with the students. And at first they were very shy and they didn't want to do it, but it eventually became very student driven, and they were constantly asking me almost every class, can we do a sharing circle? So they focused on reflections on the chapters, personal experiences. Sometimes they would talk about a scene in the book that was related to our inquiry question. And it became a very necessary part of our classroom to do this weekly. And we also continued it even after the novel. Next slide. Next slide, please. Unless it's frozen. I think it's frozen.
Erica's just coming back, everybody. Here she is.
All right. And then we did a skinny question with the class. So they were really interested in if the spirit bear was actually real. and if it actually existed. So I played them a little provocation video from National Geographic of the spirit bear in a forest in northern BC. And then they asked some questions about it. And their questions were really good. They had a lot of fun placing them along that continuum. And we eventually came up with a question: how does the environment shape the way the spirit bear act? And this, before we started reading the chapter where the spirit bear attacked Cole. So that was kind of cool how we were able to reference this question as we read the chapter. Next slide. And they created character profiles. All of them focused on Cole, who was the protagonist of the story. So we worked together to brainstorm all of his qualities and his personality and characteristics. We did a little bit of paragraph writing. So you see Zion here is pretending to eat the burger. I use burger as an analogy for paragraph. And they were hesitant to start writing, but we eventually went into I am poems. So they created little I am Cole or I am Peter poems. And it was really great to see how they were able to draw from that brainstorm map and create really moving poems. Next slide. And as their final project for the unit, they created totem poles, and they were personal for students, so they were not comfortable with me sharing their final totem, but we started with the bottom. So your bottom animal represented your past, the middle one represented your present, and then the top one represented your future. And they did some research on animals that they would like to represent stuff, and then they had to write a paragraph for each explaining why they chose that animal. And a lot of them actually were able to connect their totems back to that original inquiry question, as they talked about, you know, instances of revenge or where they had to say sorry, or, you know, so they really enjoyed this. And I wish I could share their totems with you, but I have to respect their decisions. That. And then
Sorry.
Okay. And then with my grade 9s, also did a little study on.
Is that too far?
That's like the end.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Sorry.
No, it's
Canva,
okay.
Canva does not flick like the other ones in this
It's okay.
video. Sorry about that. I don't know how to make it go back. Just wait. Keep talking. I'm gonna find it.
Okay, so we did a novel study on the Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, and this grade 9s loved that book. The question was, how does your relationship with others, place in the community shape your identity? And once again, I did this up into 3 parts because it was a big question to start off with. And I did the exact same thing with that I had done with the grade 8s. And I really felt that they were able to understand the question better by doing this. So we did my relationship with others, my relationship with place, and my relationship with the community. And then we did some found poetry, as they were also hesitant to start writing. So I figured poetry and would be good, and like doing found poetry. So necessarily writing your own piece, but looking through Sherman Alexi's other poems and creating something with his words. So they really liked that, and they were very personal poems as well. I'll just share Jones's. In the morning, you wake up alone, you go brush your teeth, you forgot you're not home, to be no one with nothing, eats, repeat, so you open the fridge again. And they connect they were able to connect their poems back to the inquiry question. So then we did a Zoom with Lexi. So the week before, I didn't let them know that we were doing this, and we did a skinny thick question routine as well. And I just said, you know, if you had the chance to ask Sherman, Alexi some questions about the novel, what would your questions be? And so they came up with some amazing questions. And the following week, we had a blast with Sherman for the entire afternoon. They asked their questions, Sherman read some poems to them. They talked about life on the res, and it was so fun. And on our next slide, we have a video of Sherman reading a poem that was a response to our inquiry question.
That must be lovely for the good ceremonies and good people that he left behind when he escaped the place where he was meant to die young.
So cool.
I'll respond that. So that was really cool, and his poem that he read called Runner was another great provocation for the kids. They just loved it, and they loved the meaning behind it, and they were able to connect with it. And then once we finished the novel, I did a hexagonal thinking routine with them to kind of summarize everything and reflect back on it. So they helped me brainstorm words and ideas relating to our inquiry. And then the next week they gathered in groups with a pile of hexagons that they had brainstormed, and they were able to make connections with the words on all 6 sides of the hexagon for each hexagon. So I gave you a little example there. So we start with the word racism, alcoholism matches with it, but then they had to think about what would match with alcoholism but still matched with racism. And there was lots of great discussions going on. Students would put hexagons together, and then someone from the group would say, well, why are you doing that? Or I don't agree with this. Why don't we put this one here? And it was a really fun activity. Paige got to sit in on it for a little while. And students really liked it. As you can see, they took some creative liberty with how they used their hexagons. But it was a really fun thing for them to do, and I think that they really got the meaning of collaboration through that. And we did TP making. So this connected to our cultural calendar. We first talked about the dwellings and homes of the Inuvialuit people in the past and present, and then we also looked at the Spokane past and present dwelling homes. And then they also inquired into the traditional dwellings and homes of my people, Swampy Cree, and that's how we came to in some TP. So they had a choice between making either an igloo or a teepee, and they chose to do teepees, and they really liked it. This craft, I had a kit from Actua, Shelby. And their final project was to do a body biography. So they, after reading the novel, they each connected really well with a character, and so we did size drawings, and they had to split their bodies in half and draw themselves on one side, and then the character that they connected with on one side, and then write a little 2-pager about why they feel connected to that character. And then lastly, these are just some things that I learned, and I feel like my student learned from these units, that collaboration is so important. Writing can be fun, not boring. Self-advocacy equals co-creation. So we're very helpful in that. And all questions are good questions. They were kind of scared at first about, my question isn't very good, but now they know any question is amazing. And to design with student strengths in mind. And thank you. Oh, I'll answer the questions in the chat.
Tori, I just want to say, I know that, you know, it's a bit nerve-wracking to present, but I really love and appreciate the way you intentionally created this presentation, how beautiful it is, and how clear and connected everything was. You really did a fantastic job of that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh,
You'll type them, okay.
Tori, you're amazing. You're amazing. I love Blair in the background being like, here's a question. She's like your sidekick, your Oprah. What do we got? What are the questions that you want to speak to, Tori?
I think she said she's gonna type them in chat, if that's
Beautiful.
okay.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Because I'm curious too, how the heck did you book Sherman Alexie? Like, that is so cool for kids to connect with the author, and of all authors to connect with, like Sherman Alexie, the coolest.
I just reached out to his team through his website and we were able to set it up.
Sometimes it's just that easy.
Yeah.
And although I love, Tori, I love hearing stories like that of classrooms connecting with authors. You know, friends, I don't want you to take Tori's high bar and say the inquiry would only work if, or gosh, if I don't hit that, the inquiry is not worthwhile. Tori, there are so many skills that your students were flexing throughout that learning that I just feel, whether Sherman Alexie zoomed in or not, it was such a powerful inquiry. So yeah, kudos to you for getting them. Highly jealous, you know, FOMO, but also, yeah, not the bar that we need to set, friends, just to be really clear.
But really appreciate the thinking that went into trying, you know, and reaching out to him authentically. And I appreciate East 3 Secondary's hashtag race entry with hashtag authentic audience, because that definitely works for that. So good job. All right, well, we are really on schedule. Oh, we'll do Blair and then we'll take a break. How does that work? How do you think? Will that work, Blair?
Yeah, that works. Mine won't
Blair.
be too long.
Oh, don't worry. Like we have a really great on time.
Okay.
You want me to share? It was clumsy last time, but I'm happy
Yeah,
to.
just go for it.
Okay.
Okay, so for those who don't know, I'm the grade 6 teacher at Mangala. So this year much was an inquiry journey for my student and myself.
Sorry about that. Keep going.
No worries. So before I started any inquiry project, I really wanted to center it around my student strengths and their stretches and who they are. You can go to the next slide.
Yeah.
So I have quite a small class. I only have 13 students. And the best of days, I have about half of them. So a lot of students' strengths are like participation, math, hands-on learning, really good at making connections and oral communication. And their stretches are attendance, questioning, and written assignments. So I'm going to set a goal for next year with my students in mind. I'm not sure if I'm going to be teaching them, but either way, like whoever I'm teaching next year, kind of my goals are to generate thicker questions, explore more guided student-led inquiry. So for the first inquiry activity we did was a school-wide igloo building. Paige touched on this a bit yesterday. It's centered around math and how we do a bit of viral learning with the kind of all the topics they've learned so far in the year. So we based it around how can my estimation be represented using a variety of math concepts, and it was connected to an inquiry question of what modern materials and methods be used to build mini igloos. So I wanted the kids to really learn problem solving skills, use their estimation, explore design, explore expressing numbers, and we also used a lot of oral communication with that one. So for thinking routines, challenges of my students is coming up with questions and just trying to kind of share their ideas in the class. So I've really tried to build confidence within this year. So we used this Think Wonder, and we used some of these pictures as a provocation of what do you see, you wonder, what do you think. It was super accessible to all the students in the class, which was really great to see. And then for their project, we used the E3 math routine of estimate, explain, and plan. So we just tailored it to fit into the building. And I found that it was really easy at chunking for students who needed it, but it also allowed students who were more confident to go ahead and do multiple stages in one lesson. So this was kind of a process. We provocations and thinking routines around what we already knew and what did we want to know. And then our second step, we did a school-wide building event, place conscious learning and out to the point, and we built with local elders. And at the same time, also, I was working with the PST to create a poem with pictures to help with like oral literacy and to help them with their writing understanding. And then our last process, as there's a few pictures there, students began to design and create their own mini igloos using math strategies and manipulatives in the class. And that was a super exciting to see just how many different ways and different materials the students could use to build igloos. So then the next part, I just have some pictures of our igloo build and then the student-led igloo building in class. So the students took what they learned from elders to use to make their own igloos. So the students had decided on ice cubes, be a modern material to make mini igloos. And it was kind of an experience because we did have a few problems. They realized that the classroom was too warm. So we went outside, realized that the ice cubes weren't perfectly shaped. So tried to use cups to hold up the ice cube. Started running into the playground to grab snow to kind of compact it. So that was a really fun kind of natural way of inquiring about why wasn't it using it, or why wasn't it working as well as we thought? How could we make adaptations? What could we use next time to mimic how igloos are traditionally built? That was a really cool kind of natural, unexpected lesson we used. And the kids seemed to really enjoy it. And then again, it was accessible to all, and they all seemed to really enjoy it without having too much of a focus on written, because that can be kind of a trigger for some of my students that causes shut down. So that was kind of to see them all engaged. And then our second inquiry that we are currently kind of still working on is Mangalala is creating a book using northern animals, and it's a bit of a cookbook. What can you do with animals? So my class was given rabbits for this year, which was a bit more of a challenge because we don't really have rabbits up in Tuck. So we kind of did what we could with it. So we came up with a question that kind of fits some of the other inquiries of thriving and surviving. Our question was, we use rabbits to survive and thrive in modern times. A lot of the students don't have a lot of experience with rabbits, so this was a bit more of me leading the questioning. Yeah, so our skills were kind of similar: oral, making connections. Oh, I made a mistake. We're not expecting numbers for this one. Inquiry skills, and just coming up with questions for elders. Yeah, you can go to this one. So for the rabbits, we try to connect it back to our science unit of biodiversity, and how we could identify characteristics of the rabbits, environments of the rabbits, and how we can use them in a way that can make the students a capable person. How can they help the community? And just learn tangible and valuable skills for the students in the future. So for this one, we use a KWL chart and thinking boards. I don't have them anymore just because our school is being purged with renovating. So unfortunately, the kids either took their work home or it had to go in the garbage. But we use the KWL chart as kind of like, what do you know as a piece of assessment for their science. The wonder part was they were able to produce questions for our 2 elders that came in. And then what have they learned? Also another assessment piece. And the students could do this orally, or they could do it written, or do it visually through drawing. So the first part, they learned how to skin, gut, and cook rabbits that we were able to get from Inuvik. And the kids loved it. They absolutely could not stop kind of exploring the rabbit, the internal body parts, what's this, what's that, taking guesses of, is this the heart or is this the kidney? So that was really interesting to see. And there was a lot of students who aren't normally engaged in class that just couldn't kind of put it down or put the rabbit down and just kind of asking questions. And then we learned to cook rabbit, and a lot of the students got to try it for the first time. So I just put in the students' reflections or takeaways. I asked them at the end just to share. So a lot of them said that they really enjoyed exploring the rabbit, trying new parts. For some reason, they really wanted to eat the eyeballs. And apparently it tastes like chicken. So if anybody wanted to know. And they appreciated learning from elders and listening to stories, which was great to see. We had Agnes White come in for the cooking part. And then our second part, which they are still kind of learning, is we learned how we can use rabbit fur to help our families, either like economics for money, or how we can to make mitts, moccasins for clothes to wear. So just with like kind of a time crunch, we decided to make pigs, owls, and they explore different furs and how rabbit is a lot softer, so you have to be with it. So for this one, we focus kind of on craft skills, creativity, perseverance, that hopefully students can be inspired to pick up traditional sewing, that this could become like a job opportunity in the future, and it ties back to our capable person. So yeah, they had a lot of fun. We had Betty Elias come in, and the kids, it was interesting to see them try to explore different furs that aren't necessarily owl colors. So we have a cheetah print owl. So that was really good. This one was a little more challenging for students that don't necessarily like sewing. I did have a few students refuse, but we're still trying to see if we can get them to do some sort of sewing by the end of the year. So that's definitely something to kind of look into for next year. It's just how to encourage my students to participate, or how can I provide them with a different opportunity with kind of fur or beading. And I just have one more slide kind of around the assessment. So as I said before, I tried to design it around my students to help encourage confidence, participation, and that they are capable people. So we used a lot of Padlets and Jamboard, oral conferencing. They really enjoy Kahoot, KWL charts, and peer and self-assessment. Oh, what just happened? Sorry, can you hear me? I don't know what just happened. Yeah, okay. The computer just turned off or something. Yeah, and then so for this is education, I really just tried to focus on students sharing their knowledge at their working grade levels, or being comfortable with how they shared either their math numbers. We used a lot of manipulatives, and a lot of student kind of voice was included. For the sewing, we had students kind of do part of the sewing and then have another adult do another part, just so that we had some engagement, or they could at least see adults also participating and helping them. And then I should say, I guess, tried to chunk up as much as possible and just give students enough time to process the information and reflect on their learning. So yeah, that is my presentation.
Mic drop, Blair. Mic drop. I love that. I love that you're ending with inclusivity and differentiated assessment. Like, look at that list on the left, Erica. Doesn't that get you excited? All the different ways that, yeah, Blair
This
was
whole
able
slide
to
is very
scaffold
exciting.
assessment. Isn't it? Yeah. Someone should throw that on the Instagram.
Yeah, in terms of the like really intentionally designing for students, for challenges, for stretches, and for strengths, like that both of these presentations really clearly you knew who the students were and starting that way, and then really building according to who's in the room is really evident. So really appreciate that, those really nice clear examples of student-centered design, student authentic co-designing, and really supporting student growth and learning. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you to
Yeah.
both.
Yeah, there was a deep level of responsiveness. I think that's another through line this morning, you know, responsiveness to our students' strengths, our student stretches, and then what the learning is that's unfolding before us, right? What is the learning telling us, and how does it inform next steps?
Yeah.
Thank you, Paige. Thank you, Tori. Greatly appreciate you both. Erica, are we going to take a break? Is that the plan?
Yeah, we are. So I encourage you, before you light off into your break space, to drop a line in the chat just from something that you've heard or seen this morning. And then let's take a quick 10-minute break. So, well, 12-minute break, come back at 10:40, I guess that would make it, right? Or is that 15 minutes?
That would be a 17-minute break. So if you want
Yes.
12, we'll come back at 35 after. Do you want to come back at 40 after?
That's what I meant. 35 after. Let's go 12 minutes.
35 after. 12
We're a
minutes.
little bit behind.
Cue your clocks. 12 minutes. Thank you, friends. Thank you, Erica. not nearly as exciting as Jen's new baby, but arguably cuter. Sorry, I can say that without Jen here. Arguably cuter Princess Poppy coming in for a cameo.
I'm not entirely sure she's going to agree with you that your dog is cuter than her baby, but
Of course not. Of course not. No one sent Jen a text. No one sent Jen a text. Never said.
I'm really glad that she joined her crew though. That was cool.
That was really beautiful. That was special. It is a community, Erica. It is a community. And I think the power of a collaboration that has scaffolded into some of the learning that has been shared. Yeah. Clear indicator of success, if we were to use the teacher jargon. Indicator of success, powerful collaboration.
I'm really appreciative.
What's your dog's name?
This is Poppy. Yeah.
How old is Poppy?
Poppy's 5.5, almost 6. And sometimes she shows a little bit of interest when I come up from the office and she's like, oh, you're here? Oh, I'll follow you back down. And so she'll want to come up, but she has no interest in the Zoom camera. Like when I'm away traveling, I'll FaceTime with the family and she like doesn't care about my voice. Yeah.
Oh, she's cute.
She has eyelashes for days. Eyelashes for days.
She likes Katie's voice.
Yes, totally.
Okay, well, we're just about cluing up our break time here. We're gonna spend some time with CPNS post break. And so if you're just trickling in, we're gonna get started, I believe, with Taylor and Morgan. You guys are first, eh? You're muted.
Hi guys. Yeah, we're gonna do separate presentations. I sent you my PowerPoint. Would you mind pulling that up for me, Erica? And I can go first.
Definitely would not. Just give me 1 minute to do awkward Zoom dancing.
Right on. Thank you.
You'd think after this much experience, you'd be like so proficient, but like not. It's not true. Everyone see that?
Right on. Thank you. So yeah, I've been doing my inquiry project on Avatar. I teach grades 6 through 9 in my classroom. And Avatar is one of the units that is suggested or I guess mandatory through the school board as one of our inquiry units. So this is a unit I'm currently still working on. So just kind of wanted to share with you guys what I've done so far and what we are planning on doing moving forward. Can I go to the next slide? Awesome. So inquiry, I find, is something that I am obviously still working on, and I am still growing, and I am a learner for sure. So I just wanted to make myself some of my own personal attainable goals that I can work on throughout this unit. And I was lucky enough to have Erica come in and do an inquiry unit as a whole school and kind of just taking what I've learned from that and trying to apply it in my individual classroom. So one thing I really wanted to work on through this unit was just like increasing my overall oracy strategies and my thinking routines. I really wanted to make sure I had a learning wall in my classroom that was accessible for all students. And right now we just went through geese hunting season, so my attendance was reduced. So I wanted to make sure I had a learning wall where students could go and access information that they missed from the previous day. I wanted to enhance my overall use of provocations. And lastly, our school was also really lucky to be part of the Shelley Moore pilot group. And so I wanted to create more accessible assessments, but with those opportunities for extensions. So that was kind of my personal goals throughout this unit. So this is my learning wall, just kind of giving you guys a quick look at it. Definitely there's more to be added and we're still using it every day. And I will kind of touch on it as I move throughout the presentation. But this is something where there's examples of paragraph writing. We are having the kids sticky notes through our oracy strategies. They are getting posted here. So I'll talk about this more on the next slide. Yeah. So the first thing I did was kind of of went through what are the strengths of my individual learners. And if you see this, I have a large amount of my students, like I only have 11 kids. So when there's 5 or 6 of them on one skill, that's more than half the class, or about half the class. So a large of my class are very knowledgeable on the land. And if they don't already have the land knowledge and skills, most of my class wants it. It's something that they're looking into, something they're really interested in. So that's kind of a big focus that I took from doing my classroom profile and figuring out what the strengths were and integrating that throughout my unit. Good. Yeah, awesome. So one of my provocations to kind of kick this off is on the right-hand side, I asked my kids, what does it mean to be successful and have a good quality of life today? Because I really want to talk to them as what does it mean to survive versus thrive? And at the beginning at this unit, a lot of the kids were talking about like, oh, like our ancestors survived in Canada for hundreds and thousands of years, but wanted to like take that word away of survive and say they didn't survive, they thrived for years. So we did this provocation of what does it mean to be successful and have a good quality of life. And all the kids were talking about like housing, having snowmobiles, having a good education and all these great things. And then once we knew what it was to be successful and to thrive, I said, what does it mean to just barely survive? You know, what's the bare minimum just to kind of be able to survive through daily life, right? And so that was really neat to look at. And because of that, I was able to kind of then pull into a case study of the Blood Warriors, which is a traditional Kenyan Indigenous group that has not been impacted by Western society at all. And connecting to place, although that it is Kenya, I had been there and I had met the Blood Warriors. So we did like a little pictures and showing them my experiences there. So although it is far away, I'm the teacher and they kind of were able to make that personal connection to it a little bit more. It didn't seem as far away. And throughout this case study, we were looking at, were these people thriving or were they just surviving? And at first my kids were like, it's so hard to live there. Like, why don't they just move, you know? And I was like, well, they have everything they need to totally thrive, right? The cattle is their currency. They live off of the cattle. And I was able to do a comparison with that to the caribou. Our kids did a big inquiry project with this earlier in the year as a whole school looking at the caribou. And so I was able to talk about how the caribou was almost currency previously. The caribou provided their food, helped with shelter, it helped with their clothing. And that was similar to the cattle in Kenya. So always connecting it back to place. Even though it is Kenya, they were able to really make that relationship between the two. And then because of that, we were able to kind of do a comparison analysis. In the middle of the Venn diagram is how are both of these groups thriving pre-colonization and now, and what did they need to survive? So obviously the climates are very different, but they survived off of the land. The land provided them with food, shelter, family relations were there, culture, all of those things, right? So this provocation of what does it mean to be successful and have a good quality of life was able to kind of tie in this case study and me really just trying to always bring it back to place, even though we were looking at Kenya. And the video is really cool. There's like hunting, they're surviving. They are cutting up and eating different animals, which the kids are totally connecting to. Although the animals are very different, it's an interest of theirs is the hunting practices and everything. So even though it looked a little bit different, they were still really engaged. So that was really neat to see. Awesome. So my essential question was, how is land, language, and culture connected to a balanced self within Indigenous communities? And when I posed that question to the students, we ended up actually reworking it because they thought balanced self was a really big word and they kind of had a hard time with it. So we ended up changing it, and I should have put that here. But they ended up changing it to how does land, language, and culture connected to them in their best self. So that was a really good way of always bringing back that idea of capable person. And once again, always like thinking of place. How does their land, their language, their culture help them make their best self? And then we can go out from there and talk about Indigenous groups across Canada and North America. And then I was using the thinking routine of like I used to think and now I think. So at the beginning of this unit, when I posed this question, these were some of the answers I got. And then at the end of this unit, I'll be going back and posing it to them. And that way they can kind of do that comparing is what did they used to think compared to what they think now. Awesome. And so with this entire unit of the movie Avatar, where we're talking about imperialism and how is imperialism demonstrated throughout the movie Avatar and then connecting it to Canada and place. So at the beginning of my unit, I actually was able to bring my kids to an elders lunch, and the elders talked about a variety of different things. But one of the things they were talking about was how colonization has impacted the education system. How has it impacted family relationships? How has it impacted like even just like their personal experience, I guess I would say, with colonization. And I talked about the fur trade. And one thing that really stuck with the kids, and I put it up on the wall on our learning wall, is they said they used to sell one gun for all of their furs stacked up that high. And so that quote is on the wall, and just like really making sure the kids understand like how challenging that must have been, you know, and how does that relate to imperialism and talking about greed and resources and exploitation. And I feel like the students were able to feel more comfortable talking about this because these are hard topics. And so always recognizing that I'm a teacher with a Southern perspective and my own biases, of course, but for them to be able to feel more comfortable as the elders are people that are their family members, they are their aunties, uncles, grandparents. So I feel like having this at the beginning of my unit really opened up conversations. It really made my students feel more comfortable to talk about sometimes hard things, for sure. And it was something that we could always go back to is when we're talking about imperialism across North America, if we're talking about British Columbia, anywhere else, they were able to kind of talk about, okay, well, what did my grandparents say about this? Like, how did it impact my people? How would that impact other people? How does that make them feel? And that can kind of compare. So how is this learning impactful? We are talking about the idea of capable person. We're talking about culture revitalization, land reclamation, and all of these big things. And we're talking about as a global, or like a, we talked globally because we talked about the British Empire, but we also are talking about within North America, and we're always bringing it back. So how can you be more capable? How can we retain like the Gwich'in language? How can you guys be retaining a Gwich'in culture, right? So the students are always thinking about their own capacity and their own capable person and things that they want to do. So if it's hunting more practices, more art, and I'm always recognizing with the students that once again, like being someone from the South, it is important to be always talking about these things with their family. Like, what does it mean to be capable? What does land reclamation mean to their family, their parents? And like, that's also bringing it back to place. So with these big topics, always making sure that they're getting ideas from family and then coming back to the classroom and sharing, what did your parents say? What did your parents think about what we've been learning in class? What is a way that you guys can help support land cremation, culture revitalization, all of those really important things. So growing together, evidence that has been collected. So I do need to get a good writing piece out of this with it being English. And so we are doing a comparative essay with imperialism and the relationship between imperialism and the movie Avatar and within North America. And so I scaffold this, and with my idea of kind of like thinking of my Shelley Moore, my kids are not big writers. That's not one of their favorite strengths. And so I kind of cheated them into it a little bit. I'm like, we're just going to write one simple paragraph on a similarity. And they wrote their paragraph in a day, and it was all good. And then the next day I was like, okay, we're going to write one more paragraph about this, and it's no big deal. And then they did that, and I was like, all right, we're going to throw an intro and a conclusion on it, and then you've got your essay. And so that was kind of my access point, was like chunking it, making it super small attainable goals. And then by the end of it, they're like, whoa, I just wrote this entire essay, with the extension that they could always write a third. So with my kids, or my students, I should say, it was X point was making sure that they had 2 body paragraphs in addition to the intro and conclusion, but really providing that extension for people to be doing those 3. And then we are doing graffiti exercises and just like overall different oracy strategies. I am always assessing, you know, with our KWL charts, our like we're doing Kahoots, all of those types of things in class, I will be assessing. So those are smaller things. But one big thing, which I'm really excited about, is my class is actually going on an exchange trip to Victoria, BC, and we're leaving in 9 days, which is so awesome. So just kind of bringing that back into this unit. And so the students will be creating a journal, a photo journal while they're there. And their essential question is, how is colonization and Indigenous cultures memorialized in Victoria, BC society? So while they're there, are they seeing road signs that are recognizing memorialized as Indigenous cultures? Are they, when we go to the legislature in BC, what do they see within the legislature? All these different places. And while we're going to be taking photos of how is the Indigenous groups there memorialized. And we're doing a little case study to give them some prior knowledge before we go later this week. And then when they come back from BC, they're going to be creating a PowerPoint presentation, and their families are going to come in, which is really cool. So that kind of goes in my next slide. It's all here. They're kind of together. But they're going to be doing a share out. So their families will be able to come in. The students will be doing little small presentations of their choice. If they want to do like a podcast, if they want to do a PowerPoint presentation, and how, as the pictures that they've seen, things that they have learned within British Columbia, demonstrate how Indigenous cultures and Indigenous societies are memorialized there, and kind of doing the relationship between here and Sikachik and there. So that is my unit. It is still working on it. We are wrapping it up at the end of the school year, but that's what we've been doing.
I love the chunking. I love the chunking. And you say, you know, you kind of fooled them. You started with one and then you added on another the next day. But that scaffolding is so helpful. Strength-based first, scaffolding. Yeah, so helpful.
Yeah, the intentional moves of scaffolding this morning and evident again in this one are really clear about that, setting my own personal, like I really love the setting your goals piece in terms of kind of what you were looking to build out this unit around, and then integrating both of those parts, and then also piggybacking on the work that had already been done in the building. That was really evident in your share. So, Masi.
Do you have a full agenda when you're in Victoria? Is your schedule really, really full?
We do have an agenda, but I'm sure we're in Metchosin. So the students are staying in Metchosin.
Gotcha. Beautiful.
And then we're having days that we're going to Victoria.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
well,
I'm really excited.
If you
the
want
kids
to
are
pop
actually
by
going
my
to go
school.
to university. Okay, I will for sure. I'll shoot you an email. I'll send you our itinerary and see if maybe we're in the area.
Yay! Yay!
Cool. Thanks, Trevor.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll go next.
Yes. And then just before you start, Ramel, Taylor, you shared me your presentation, but it's like, okay, I got it. Never mind. I was like, where did it go? But I think I found it. Okay, go ahead, Ramel, and I will get your stuff up right now because I am in charge of that.
Sounds great. Thank you, Erica. I am Ramel, and I am a teacher here at CPNS, and I teach multi-grade, grades 1, 2, and 3. I have 1 grade 1, 4 grade 2 students, and 4 grade 3 students. Let me just start with this. Just to give you guys a little bit of a background, in April, we did the whole school did a unit on storytelling. And this month of May, no, this is June already, last month, we transferred the learning from the work on stories and created a targeted skill building unit around birds, specifically on geese. And considering taking the BDDEC inquiry cycle, which is in the next slide, Considering the BDDEC increase cycle, I use that guide to deliver my unit or my lessons. I started with thinking in place, connecting to self and community, growing together, and coming to know. And for each quadrant of the cycle, that has been my guide to deliver the lessons or the unit on geese. Next slide, please. Considering thinking in place, the first quadrant, which is the land, to activate students' prior knowledge and to arouse students' interest in geese. Next slide, please. Students use the thinking routine. What do you notice about geese? What you wonder about geese? Thank you very much. And the students had a lot of notices or noticing for sure, and a lot of wonderings. And the picture in the middle is students doing go-go, which is very interesting for them. They enjoy go-go a lot, and it is applied in almost every lesson in my classroom. And the wonderings of the students were or are going to be used for or were going to be used to ask the elders. I'm sure the students had a lot of wonderings, and they use those wonderings to ask the elders. Yes. And next slide, please. On a Friday, um, for our school-wide inquiry fun activity, there you go. Thank you very much. Students were brought into the school camp with our language and culture teacher to show us the fundamentals of plucking, singeing, gutting, and cleaning goose. And the following Monday, thank you very much. Next slide, please. Students were brought up to the Churchill or at the camp as part of the school-wide cultural activity. Elders, knowledge keepers were invited to share their knowledge and experience and stories on geese hunting, first aid, especially when being out in the land. And we also invited an elder to share his stories about geese hunting as well. So these are my students listening and doing the activity or doing the plucking and singeing as well. Next slide, please. There we go. They saw how geese are singed and how geese are gutted, and these are my students on the left side of the picture. Sorry. Thank
I don't know
you.
which one you're on. This
On the
one?
left side of the picture.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. On the left side of the picture, students were applying first aid, and Rebecca, one of the community members, um, was
Oh,
willing to share her knowledge in first aid. Thank you. Yes, that one. And Peter Ross was gracious enough to share his stories on geese hunting as well. And on the next slide, yes, that one, Peter Ross was invited into the classroom as well. And stories from the book Gwicha Gwichin Gugwandak. Some of the stories there were read to students. And yeah, and the next slide, Grace was in our classroom, one of the elders. Grace was in our classroom to share her stories about geese as well, geese hunting or preparing geese after it's hunted. So yeah, activities is activating students' prior knowledge, arousing students' interest, using thinking routines, inviting elders, experience at the camp, listening to stories were all guide to the lesson that we're going to bring back into the classroom. All of these activities, all these prior activities were a great help to direct the lesson, and the experiential or empirical teaching approach, which we were gonna bring back to the classroom to discuss a procedural writing as part of the next cycle of the BDEC inquiry cycle, growing together. In the classroom, a discussion on procedural writing or how to essay was presented. We talked about the parts of procedural writing. It's a big word. Students still have a hard time pronouncing the word procedure. I myself have a hard time saying that word too. So one of the students was using the word how to essay, which is easier for her to say. And yeah, but I've been having my students to practice saying the word procedural writing. So parts of the procedural writing were discussed as well. Transition words, hook or hooking the readers to read your stories to make them interested. Closing sentence was discussed as well. Conventions, introductions for sure, and a lot of modeling. I do, we do, you do was used in the process. So this is like the model that we have used in the slide 15, please. Thank you very much. Yes, this was 15. Thank you very much. So the modeling part took so long because the way I did it and the way Miss Colleen McClellan did it, the way we did it together, we wanted to show the students the thinking process. So when we were writing the hook, we always do you, and I would ask my students to help me spell the words so that students could see the thinking process on how to do it by themselves independently with their stamina. So the thinking process, the modeling, I do, we do, you do, took like forever because, yeah, getting the students to see the thinking process to it was challenging, but in the end, it was productive because the students were doing it independently. So, yeah, the modeling part took forever for sure because of the thinking process that or we want the students to see. If we move on to the next slide, slide 16. Um, Thank you very much, Erica. You're appreciated. And this is my grade 1 writing piece sample. This is from a grade 1. The expectation for grade 1 is only to write first then. But this student gets the concept of procedural writing for a grade 1 student, and he's enjoying it so much. He's not done. This is just a uh, partially finished activity or writing piece, and he's not done. He's still working on it. He still wants to continue working on it. So because he gets the concept, he saw the thinking process, he saw the modeling, so he just wants to continue. And because of the experience they had at the camp and activating prior experience, prior knowledge, that was a great help for the students to continue writing and finishing up their writing piece. On the next slide, slide 17, please. This work is from a grade 2 student. As you can see, there's a title, there are materials, there is a hook that the student came up with, there are transition words, there are conventions, period, comma, there is an introduction, there's a hook, which is the introduction, and there's also a closing sentence. So the expectation from grade 1 and the expectations from grade 2 are totally different. And if we look at slide 18, a work from a grade 3 student, the learning and the writing piece was extended. There you can see from her work, she has labeling, she has speech bubble, she has a speech bubble or thinking bubble, and she has a closing sentence. And yeah, different expectations for each grade, and they're just doing it because as I said a few minutes ago, the thinking process, they saw how it's done, the experience and the prior knowledge was activated, so they're just doing it. And the expectations, they know what's expected of them. And Trevor's work was included or was applied in this unit, which is the go-go, and Leighton's work, thinking routine. What do you notice? What do you wonder? I think it's a combination between Trevor's work and Leighton's work. Now let's move on. I'm sorry. These are my students working. They're enjoying it so much. They're so into it. And as you can see on the right side of the picture, there's a lady there who's wearing a gray cardigan. That's my principal. When she saw everybody, when she passed by the classroom, everybody was just into working. They were so focused on work. She came inside the classroom and she started, yeah, that's her, Lara. And she started, seeing what the other students were working on. And the students were so proud of their work, they were sharing their work to Lara. And Lara was just, listening to students presenting, informally presenting. Yeah. And on the next slide, um, by the way, I'm just going to give a great shout out, a loud shout out to my principal and to Colleen McClellan. This would never have happened without their support. So I'm really grateful to have them as my support and rock in the school. And the collaboration among teachers is just, yeah, it's just one of the good things that I am grateful for being at the school. And these are my two students. They couldn't be bothered. They were so focused on their work. One was looking at the words that he was going to use for his writing, procedural writing, and one is just, oh, please don't talk to me. I'm focusing on my work. That kind of like image. And on the next slide, page, yes, this is the writing toolbox, and these are the expectations, and this was my guide to this is my guide and the students guide to create a procedural or how listed in the lobby of the school. And next slide, please. Thank you very much. Okay, is that the slide? Okay, this one. So, okay, I get it. I found where I got my thoughts. So Trevor's work on inquiry is applied in this unit. Layton's inquiry thinking routine was applied in this unit. Now let's apply Shelley Moore's work on making a learning continuum, co-designing a learning continuum or assessment with the students. It was a co-creation. It was a co-design. Students helped me a lot on this learning assessment. They all came up with this learning assessment. I prompted them for sure, but they were the ones who came up with this learning continuum. What's expected of them? And on the next slide, this is what everybody can do. Okay, but if they could have labels, if they could have a closing sentence, which is this I could part, it's just additional. If they could do it, great. But what's expected of them, I can. That's the only thing I am asking from the students. That's the only thing that they are expected to do. But if they could have labels, if they could have a closing sentence, if they could use conventions, then it's an extension of learning. And this is one of my students, and she was already doing a checklist on her own. And she was telling me, Mr. M, I can do this, I can do this, I can do that. So yeah, it was a good time to co-create and co-design a learning assessment with the students. And on the next slide, I'm sorry, this is, and coming to know, okay, the people self spirituality and the land, which is the last quadrant of the BDEC inquiry cycle. Next slide, please. This is the time the students could share their learning, their projects to the community members. Where is this stemming from? During the Wisdom Fest in February, I believe, the students were tasked to present in front of the community members. They enjoyed it so much. So we asked the students, how could they present their work again? And they came up with, Mr. M, we want to do the presentation again. We wanted to do the presentation again amongst the members of the community. And we invited actually this Grace, that time we did not expect that she was gonna come that day, but then she came. Lara talked to me and she said, Grace is here. And then I told my students, okay, we didn't prepare much for the presentation, but we're gonna do the presentation today. And the students were just okay with it. They were just doing it. They were just excited to do it. And on the next slide, I think the students doing it, the other students are doing it. And on the right side, that was me helping, guiding, helping and supporting my student, my grade 1 student, Luke. And yeah, he was shy to do it because he had never done it before. He has never done it before. So yeah, he was doing great. He was proud of his work. And he was not only happy to present that to everybody, to all the students in the class, but also he sat next to Grace, one of the elders, to do it himself, which is, you know, an independent, one of the great ways to do the activity independently. And last, I think there was one more slide. Yes, these are my students presenting. I have an audience. Yes, before I wrap it up, I would like to let you know that what did I notice when doing this unit? I noticed that when students collaborated in the creation of the assessment or learning continuum, the students were able to see what was expected, encouragement and ownership increased. A few students tried more and added on complexities. And what did we learn? Presuming competence amongst our students, giving students voice and choice in assessment making, making it very student friendly, language increases engagement, ownership, and student friendly becomes community friendly. So my next steps will be continue to work on student-friendly language with outcomes, continue to share or collaborate with colleagues what is working and what is not working, and always provide opportunity for student voice, access point for all, as well as looking at our planning, giving more opportunities to try more and adding on complexities. So that's my speech or spiel and presentation for today. Thank you very much for indulging me with your wonderful ears. Thank you.
Ramel, thanks for indulging us. My gosh, goodness, my friend. Extraordinary. Erica, what were you going to say? I interrupted you. Forgive me.
Well, I went back to the slide because I think it's kind of, you know, really powerful to note, like, Ramel, this student, when they came to you in the fall, were they writing at all?
Not at all. This grade 1 student came to the school. He opted junior kindergarten and kindergarten. And when he came to school in September, he was a clean slate. So seeing this achievement of his, it's, I feel blessed, you know. The student is happy, the parents are happy, the teachers are happy as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to like add that context. I know that context. I know you know that context, but I just think also like I love that this is an access point, that the cultural knowledge was present, but maybe the formalized like academic curricular knowledge, not as much. And so being able to access those in this space is really heartwarming to see. I also really love the way that you have each share so far from your school has parlayed growth and knowledge on something done into the next phase of learning. So thank you for intentionally doing that and for really taking on the cycle, Ramel. Like that really helps give us some collected evidence to see how people are using it. So thanks for crafting that.
Yeah, kudos big time for using the cycle. I'm curious, Leighton, we haven't asked you to unmute at all. Leighton, any reflections so far from Ramel's sharing or beyond? As I catch you eating lunch, forgive me, you have an apple.
I just think back to when we all began together and how we really consciously wanted to make sure that we were attending to Denikade and Inikadagi, and you know, really making sure that this concept of inquiry was rooted in local ways of knowing, and it's just been so incredibly rich. Like Trevor's hair was half as high when we started this gathering because it just is that powerful, and you're really contributing, everybody. You really are. And I know it's uncomfortable to stretch, but what you're doing is you are connecting with elders in a way where it's not like, what are they doing at the school? It's that the school and the community aren't separate, and the local knowledge, and a lot of folks did science, like just seeing that is just so heartwarming and hair-raising. Thanks, everybody. Powerful.
Indeed. Thank you, everybody.
Before you get started, Taylor, I'm just going to give a little schedule update. Cole is out of the schedule. We're running, you know, a little bit on but it's just such quality. So I really want to go deep. And then if we need to, we'll flex page to the afternoon. And so we'll make that time. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the unit that I'm sharing with you guys is a unit that I am still currently working on. It is on habitats and humanities for my 4-5 class. My first step was to recognize that I have various different learners, and they have different interests and strengths and stretches in my classroom. And so recognizing that a lot of my learners are like hands-on land-based learners and not necessarily pen and paper academic learners specifically was really important for me. Half my class struggles with reading and writing just normally, so that was really important for me to recognize going forward in this unit. You can go to the next slide. So my big ideas for science were in recognizing that animals and plants live in specific habitats, classifying animals as omnivores, carnivores, herbivores, and showing the effects of plants and animals on the loss of their natural habitat, and as well as describing ways in which humans can change habitats and affect those changes. I did do this unit as a cross-curricular unit. All my activities are both crossed with BDDEC as well as ELA outcomes. So you can go to the next slide. On the general outcomes 3 and 4, we've focused on, you know, using text features as well, recognizing and identifying those text features, using proper conventions and spelling, students summarizing and synthesizing information, and finding relevant information in nonfiction text and sites. So my students did begin using and doing more online research during this activity. So we did have to modify quite a few activities just to make it a little simpler for the students who do struggle with their literacy. You can go to the next slide. As an Indigenous teacher myself, I do find it really, really important to tie in culture whenever possible, pretty much every lesson I can. So talking about the BDDEC and the Gwich'in language during this unit was super easy because we did habitats and communities, but was super important to me as well. So we incorporated Gwich'in language. We had our Gwich'in language teacher in working with us throughout this unit, helping us with different Gwich'in words that we can connect to the animals that we were studying, the habitats and the features of those habitats as well. We also made connections to land, culture, community, and history. So in talking about those habitats and talking about these animals, we focused on local animals that we could actually find in Sigachik. Yeah, we reviewed different descriptions of the animals in the BDDEC and what relevant uses those animals had in community and culture. Sorry, wrong slide. Yep, that's the right one. And we also reviewed plant descriptions in the BDDEC and connected them to, you know, animals' food sources and medicinal uses, as well as how that helps us in the end when the animals eat the plants and we eat the animals. So you can go to the next slide. So the key competencies that I focused on specifically, hold on, are creativity, thinking, communication, and writing. So an honorable mention to perseverance as well, as some of my students really struggle. They hit a wall and they're not able to really bypass that. So working with those students and creating safe spaces and alternative spaces for them to work was really important. We try and encourage all the students that they're capable of all the tasks that we do in class. They are capable of everything that we do. So just encouraging them that they are capable people as well was very important. Next slide. So getting started, the animal habitats were our first focus. So we did a KWL chart. We focused specifically on what do you already know, and what do you wonder. So an example of what do we already know about animal habitats, we know that bears live in dens. That was an example I got from a student. What do you wonder? How do bears find their dens was the wonder question. So we tried to link our questions that we know and our questions that we wonder together so that we could kind of follow along as we gained more information throughout our unit. Another example of a question we received was, do we know that Canada geese travel up north to lay their eggs, but how many different places do Canada geese stop when they migrate? So we really wanted to focus on those thick questions when possible. Obviously, still a lot of thin questions come my way, but we really tried to focus in on those thick questions that came and really milk them for all they were worth. We then had a class discussion on what is a habitat. So we just wanted to know what the students already knew before we went in, and then we went into the discussion. So we talked about what is a habitat. We know that a habitat meets all the environmental conditions an organism needs to survive. So then we talked about different examples of habitats from animals that we knew and animals that we can relate to. At the end of this class, I had students draw examples of their own personal habitats for themselves. So it was kind of just like a fun little wind down activity for them to kind of get a little bit creative and really dive into like their interest in this as well. They love to talk about themselves, so that really helped. So yeah, they had to draw an example of a habitat for themselves that meets all the environmental conditions that they would need to survive. So they needed food, water, shelter of utmost importance, but then they added silly and fun things that they feel like they can't live without, which was fun. So for our exit ticket for that class, I had each student write on a Post-it note something that they learned during our class discussion. So in our next slide, which is the one that we're on right now, just talking about a student-centered approach. So I really try and focus on my students' land-based interests. It helps me out a lot because I have a lot of land-based skills and knowledge from back home and from my own culture and identity. So I really try and focus in on those because my class is really interested in it and they learn so much. They have so many questions every time. We do a land-based skill or activity or a cultural skill. All the photos below, as you can see, are different animals that we've had in the school. These aren't all of them. These are just some examples of animals that were used in this project, actually. So these are different, all from this year, pictures of animals that were skinned and processed in our school with our class. We wanted to make sure there was connection to community as well, going back to the pictures. Yeah, sorry. Connection to community as well. As you can see in each one of these pictures, there's actually a community member leading the activity. We always try and make sure that we have community members running all our land-based activities to make sure that the skills that are being learned by the students are consistent with the skills that are taught in this space specifically. So that was really important. Connection to cultural practices and getting community support as well is really important. The kids seeing the community members in the classroom working with the animals with them really helps motivate them and increases inclusivity and their own interest in what we're working on. So you can go to the next slide.
Taylor, I hate to say this, but I'm gonna have to give you a bit of a like 5 to 7 minutes. Just
Oh,
so
yeah,
that
we're good. We'll be done in that time. No worries. Okay, so animal posters. So we wanted to create kind of a little bit more of an open activity for the students to do. So this was their assignment for this part of the unit. Students were to research a local animal of their choice to find key information through their choice of books or online resources on that animal's habitat and needs. So we actually talked about all the different animals that we only saw 4 examples, but all the different animals that we have seen and worked with throughout the year, which is lots. And we talked about how these animals are relevant to us and relevant to us in Sigachik specifically. We hunt these animals, we trap and snare, we process them every year. It's important that we know about them and we know about their habitats as well, because we're impacted by that as well. So we just have some I can statements. I can choose an animal that lives around Sigachik. I can research this animal using a tablet or books. I can explain the difference between an omnivore, carnivore, and herbivore. These are just some of the three examples of I can statement. Now, going back to the posters.
This one?
Just one slide, yeah.
Yeah.
So here's examples, yeah. Here are some examples of the Arctic animal posters that my students completed. It was actually really awesome. These posters were all completed with different modifications and extensions for different students' strengths and stretches. I was actually really impressed by my students' capabilities in completing this activity. Each and every student in my class was able to complete this activity successfully. Going back to the actual posters, sorry.
I think there's just a bit of a lag.
Oh, okay. Yeah, all good. So yeah, if you knew my class, then you know that a lot of my students really do struggle day to day in getting any kind of task completed. So the completion of these posters were a great success in my classroom. We started with I do, so I modeled an example of this poster with them. I did the research with them and I showed them how and what it was supposed to look like. Well, I had a modeled example first to show them, and then we did it together. Finally, the students did it independently. They definitely recognized that online research was a little bit tricky for them. And so for my next year doing this activity, I will definitely include some modifications to consider those things as well. Next slide. Okay, so my next topic was on habitat loss and species at risk. So we went from learning about habitats to learning about habitat loss. So my essential provocation question was, if we know what a habitat is, then how can we describe habitat loss? So we used a KWL chart again, just to help the students visualize what we're doing. So what did you already know? So the students already knew that habitats are a place that an organism can make it home, meets all its basic and essential needs. And then what do we wonder? What is habitat loss? So students had different questions stemming from that. We had a class discussion on how humans have impacted habitat loss, and we made a bit of a wonder wall talking about, well, I wonder why humans clear cut forests. And so we went into different topics that really broadened out those subjects and made for better understanding of how habitats are impacted by humans and how animals are affected by that as well. So you can go to the next slide. So we received a bunch of these species at risk books into our school with information on different Arctic animals, specifically in the Northwest Territories, that are affected by different things that, their species are at risk. Sorry for my jumbling. Students were to choose an animal that was inside that book, relevant to them again, and they used the table of contents to find that animal in the book, and then they read through the pages of the species at risk book that were relevant to the animal they had chosen and highlighted essential information that was relevant to how species are at risk in the Northwest Territories. Later, we did a go-go on our species at risk to share that information with one another. So these are some I can statements that we used for this activity. So I can use a table of contents to find information. I can highlight important text. I can skim through text to find important information, and I can summarize text in my own words. So students were made to summarize text that they had highlighted in the species at risk book using their own words, and then they did the go-go sharing the information with one another as well. So in my final slide, which is the next one, you can see the species at risk book and just like an example of what the students were looking at. The book was really awesome. It had a little bit difficult jargony words in it that were a bit complex for my students, but it was great provocation for them to ask new words and new questions. And they actually asked a lot of interesting questions about these animals and in this book. So my last part is I used to think, but now I think. So my students did that with me for these topics, and we got a lot of great responses. And how is learning impactful? We specifically focused on local animals and issues that concern us in the Northwest Territories, just to make it relevant and to promote more wondering questions, because the students are so immersed in our land here, and they have so many connections to the animals and the people and the places that they go to, that we were really able to have a lot of deep discussions and learning time with that topic and subject. So that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Taylor. Yeah, really appreciate it. I chose. And I appreciate you guys, like each unique submissions, and also, you could find so many connecting threads there. And so much place-based and so much community integration there. Thank you for that. I flexed the schedule a little bit, so we're going to end with CJS this morning. And then Francis is going to start us off in the afternoon. And Paige is going to make a little cameo throughout our reflection time. So that gives us a little bit of space in between. And I think all the participants are aware of that. So Leighton, Trevor, anyone want to give us a thought in between while we head to CJS land?
I'm just blown away. I'm just absolutely blown away, Erica. Like through lines right now for me, like big time, we keep on revisiting collaboration, don't we? And the power of a collaborative kind of learning environment and learning community, and not just teachers in the room, but breaking down the walls of the classroom to engage in anti-colonial work. It's so apparent with these stories that are being shared. So collaboration is one big takeaway for me, and yeah, definitely represented in the last share. So thank you for that.
Trying to type identity, everyone. It's very difficult.
Corey, I'm gonna cue yours up here.
Okay, I think Dustin wanted to do his first. He's sorry. Dustin's ready to go, and I'll go after him. Yeah.
By Corey, I meant Dustin. Just give me one second.
That's our bad.
Okay, Dustin.
Hey guys, just while it's queuing up, so I'm Dustin. I teach grade 4-5, and I have a presentation about the fur trade.
I will surface it in one moment.
That's all I have to say about that. If you have any questions, please.
You know what it is? It's that when I type in the Inquiry Fest things, Dustin, I always use your name first because I always start at CJS.
Yeah.
And so all my Dustin emails like are all the Inquiry.
Yeah.
So now I just need to find them, which I can't find it right this moment. Okay, one more moment. Sorry.
I can say some. You bet. I'll fill in the
no
gap.
worries.
Yeah, thanks.
I do think it's super interesting to see how folks are making like science and socials aren't even separate in a lot of these cases. Even for the secondary folks, it's not like you're covering one subject, everybody. You're actually like connecting things together through place. So I'm excited to see how you're actually kind of going deeper because you're integrating things. So I really appreciate that. When you work with the land and work with culture, it's not a subject anymore. It's just the learning, and the subjects are all in it.
Yes. To be honest, I might have to get you to send me it again, Dustin, because I can't find it, even though I accessed it like yesterday. So that's probably gonna take a minute. I'm sorry.
You want me to go? I can go if
yeah, can you? I'm
I
really
can go
sorry.
first.
I need to
Absolutely, we can. We're all about flexibility over here.
Right. So
Yeah.
okay, let me just get that up and then I'll keep looking through it. So sorry about that.
No, no worries at all. So my name's Corey. I'm the grades 5-6 teacher at CJS. And I will be presenting a bit on my inquiry network journey, my reflection on how I've kind of my understanding it has been shaped, as well as the one main project I'd been working on kind of throughout the year with my students. So we can go to our next slide. For me, starting out, I looked at it and kind of maybe with what was shared in the beginning of our learning had a lot to do with like the entry points into learning with the provocations and questions and using students' passions. I kind of always looked at it as trying to as an entry point into the learning and not as the whole thing. So that's kind of where it started for me. And so with some of that focuses, it was a focus on that understanding knowing your students well, allowing them to have voice and to be able to use their passions to create learning opportunities they'd invest in, and building their questioning skills so that they could grow their learning. Those were kind of how I'd entered into this. Those are the main things that kind of stood out as I was getting into this, and then kind of had a project around that, as well as with some of the ideas that I was looking into for how some of my other thoughts on what I thought was important for a project going into this that covered multiple subjects. So I was looking to create a project that allowed for students' passions to shine through, that was community centered and allowed the students to connect their passions with an ownership of their community, while deeply thinking about their values, their community's values, and their place in the community. So I looked into trying to do, basically the project idea was a Fort McPherson improvement project that kind of had three main steps of starting with understanding their values, the community's values, and looking into the Dene law, and seeing and then bringing in community members and knowledge holders that would share on those things, and a variety of things. From that, we did skinning caribou heads, which was tied in with the community hunt through the DGO, and showing that side of things, as well as sharing, having people telling stories, whether that's the importance of education, how they grew up, what were the values they were taught growing up, and allowing my students with that, some of the background information with that was teaching active listening skills, in working towards what it looked like to be a respectful listener and all of those kind of things. And as well as some note-taking skills, and really practicing these things by having community members and different people and knowledge holders coming in on a semi-regular basis, so that we could continue to practice those skills. And with that, building interview skills. So building their questioning, building thick and thin questions, having them grow in their understanding of that, so that they were able to use questions to build their knowledge base, that it was both the listening component as well as the questioning component, to be able to build their knowledge. So yeah, bunch of learning goals with that. We were trying to expand their knowledge through questioning, note-taking, collaboration between students, that include putting them in groups with different roles, using different roles. So we'd have a note taker, we'd have listener, questioner, and kind of someone, a quality control for what was going on for each group. And they had to work together for as well as had some self-assessment on how they were doing those roles and group assessment. Further on into the project, there was some expository writing and presentation skills that I'll talk about more as we go into it. But yeah, so yeah, the community connection story, I was just kind of going back and forth between our some of my goals and where we were at. So bringing in, I brought in a handful of elders that spoke on different things and showed different skills. We worked with fish. We did the caribou skinning head. We had a handful of people talking about different values and stories, and using those as opportunities for both active listening and interviewing. We had members of the community that had sat on Hamlet Council for a better understanding the government and how we go about planning things. And that tied into my social studies for understanding local government, so that if they had a project or something that they thought was important, that we knew the ways in which to actually have that happen and how to fund those things, who we talk to, what is the process, how do we vote on those things. And had 2 community members come in for that. What else can I go in with that? Also, we had someone come in for careers. With the careers, we talked about so there are possible jobs they could get in the community, how they go about those things. So we did a wide range of knowledge holders to try and build their understanding for the community values, as well as they're building their ownership within the community and how they can take part in that. So the first part was all kind of, it started with that Dene law, them understanding and reflecting on their own values, and then having community members come in that then shared more and broadened that knowledge and allowed them opportunities to better understand that. Our second step was then identifying problems in the community. So we went into looking at simple things from things that they wish they had, whether it would be like, oh, I wish we had a pool, or I wish our ball field was done, to more serious things, whether it was drinking and addiction, and so tying in the health community with that and talking about those things and bringing in, again, community members and to have those discussions, to help have their build understanding and what we go with that was another part of how we did that with the Hamlet and stuff as well, for building their understanding on what these things are and understanding what kind of rules can actually be put in place for those things as well, and how those go about and how those get decided. So there was a lot of exploration with that, as well as so had them thinking about identifying problems, why they saw it as a problem, how it went maybe against what the community's values were, and what were possible starting for them to start to think about possible solutions to this, which then stepped into our next and our final portion, where they would then be creating some sort of project or solution to identifying a problem. They would identify a problem. They would identify how it connected with the community's values, and they would then display how they would actually implement this solution or implement this thing. So understanding where they could get their funding, how they would get their funding, and allowing them, so it would be a mix of presentation, writing, as well as, if they wanted to, depending on what they had, being able to do either a diorama or some sort of physical representation of what they wanted to do. So we had a mix of things, going from sort of a thing like SPCA, where they were caring about animals that didn't have homes, to a pool or updated hockey rink, to dealing with things like addiction within the community. And so there was a wide variety of things that the kids became passionate about, as well as giving them the opportunities within that to display their knowledge in different ways, and which ways they were most comfortable. I have some kids that are far more active and want to, and that's why I also liked doing group dynamics, because some kids that wanted to be up front in front of the class, talking, presenting, but maybe didn't enjoy writing as much, as well as then some that had more strengths in writing, and some that were terrified to present in front of the class, and trying to still give them those opportunities to find their voice, but not making that the necessary way in which they needed to display their education or be assessed on it.
Corey, can I
yeah.
just interrupt you really quickly? I'm sorry, Trevor's gonna leave us.
Okay.
And I just want to make space for him to say goodbye and not just kind of zip out.
Oh, I feel so bad, Corey. Sorry you got interrupted.
It's okay.
I'm
It's
so
no
sorry.
worries. It's no
I'm
worries.
so sorry.
It's how it goes.
Well, friends, sadly, I do have an appointment that I cannot be late for, and I was texting Erica because it wasn't something that I wanted to just shut down the Zoom and leave from today, because really today, for me, it marks 2 years of working with most of you, and 2 years of probably the most meaningful work I've been engaged in throughout my career, and I mean that sincerely, Erica. This has been really, really special work. I know Tanya as a guest today, and Leighton, your ongoing support of this work, you see it too. And friends, I just want to thank you for your commitment to this work. Not only have you planted seeds for your own practice, but you have planted seeds within your students' learning that I truly don't know if we'll see the true benefit of the seeds that you have planted for many years. And that is the good type of work that I love being a part of. So Erica, thank you for pausing Corey ever so briefly, just so I could share my big gratitude. And forgive me as I have to step away and not hear the rest of the sharing this morning and then this afternoon. Okay.
Thanks a lot for being with us, Trevor. Really appreciate your ongoing support and value very much. So safe day and thank you. Hi, Joe.
We'll see you soon. Bye, friends.